The Bike Riders. So, The Bike Riders is a movie that was actually supposed to be released in the next couple weeks here, early December,
Right.
starring Austin Butler, J.D. Comer, Tom Hardy significantly, about a motorcycle club in the 1950s and just the different characters. Very Sons of Anarchy uh, vibes when I watching it. And 20th Century Fox or Disney, who owns 20th Century Fox, recently decided to just pull it completely. It having to do with the writers and actors strike and profitability being the main thing. And when we talk about coming soon and in media, there's been a couple movies like this in the past couple months, and the bike riders actually, luckily, because of public backlash and outcry, I believe they're selling this movie right now to other distributors. So it'll
Interesting.
probably be coming out some sort of platform or through another studio in the next year or two. But when it was supposed to come out next week, it's still a bit of a shame. And the other
Wait,
movies
wait,
that
wait. Wait, hold up. So I didn't realize they just totally yanked it all together.
yeah,
So like if
like
I
they just
wanted
took it off.
if I had bought like pre-sale tickets for this, like they'll just get refunded.
I guess it's not coming
Wow.
out. So
Because I saw trailers for this movie.
yeah, no, the trailers were like in the theaters too, in front of
Yeah.
movies, and yeah, it just was not on their list, I guess, which kind of goes to our media erasure problem that we're having at large. With a couple of weeks ago, before this podcast started, I think it was titled Coyote versus Acme, um,
Right.
starring John Cena, kind of a Looney Tunes, uh, live action cartoon hybrid, sort of Space Jam style, Jessica Rabbit, all that stuff. And they have decided, that distributing company, to not promote it. Like, they're not even going to release it. And I know about a year ago, the first major instance where this happened was the Batgirl movie. And
Right.
the interesting thing about all three of these films, the Bike Riders, Acme versus Coyote, and Batgirl, is that they're all completely finished. Like, it's not like a Zack Snyder director's cut situation where there was some production issues and it wasn't completely finished, so they'd have to go back. No, all these movies are done. And so what that means is, for the people, not it doesn't really impact the big stars per se, but the cameramen, the set designers, all that stuff, they're not credited. They don't actually get to show that that's their work. And I think um, that's a it's a pretty big issue, and it's kind of weird to me that it is an issue, especially that we're living in the age of streaming that we are, where I don't think it should be too hard for things like that. What are your thoughts, Zach, on the kind of the media erasure and just wiping movies completely off release slates?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that come to mind. The first thing that comes to mind is, and again, we're just two guys in a podcast here, but when each of these movies comes out, it's essentially the equivalent to, like, if you and I wanted to open a restaurant or a store of some kind, right? Like they're its own individual franchise. And so maybe when, before these movies are set to release, and these big studios look at them and they're like, you know what, if we release this, we're going to lose money on it with distribution and advertising. And then also, if they really don't believe in it, do they really want a negative PR cycle, which is something they have to think about when they're marketing their
Yeah.
films, right? And so I think those are kind of some factors involved with it. For this Bike Riders one, it is interesting that it was that close to coming out, and to be yanked like that. You wonder if there's that was more of a strategic thing by Disney and 20th Century Fox to think, hey, you know what, we maybe they actually do believe in this movie, but they don't necessarily want to spend that money in this season, because they've had a bunch of flops this year, right? It's not been a good
Totally.
year for Disney at the box office. That being said, it is a shame for the people that worked on movies like this, as you said. And it'd be, especially if it's like, if it was the movie that like was your big break and you were like, man, I've been working as a third assistant cameraman for 5 years and I got to be the head camera operator on this one. This was my big break. And then for the movie to get pulled like that, yeah, that's definitely unfortunate.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, because the bike riders, unlike the Looney Tunes and Batgirl, it had its trailer and its release date was very upcoming. And I think that release date was purposeful. And Austin Butler, the lead, he was Oscar nominee last year for Elvis,
Yeah.
and
Right. Yeah.
this is award season movie time. I believe this, whenever it comes out, will have some Oscar push, whether it's Oscar bait or not. I mean, it remains to be seen if it's a actually good movie, but the trailer seemed entertaining enough. So it's a bit surprising when a company drops something like this, where there would have been some award buzz going into the new year for sure. And I think it also links to another media erasure problem. I saw like Best Buy is officially stopping sales of physical media,
Yeah.
and that's the other thing to think about when it comes to these movies is, again, in the age of streaming service and stuff. I don't know why you couldn't just put that movie up, but these movies wouldn't even be able to be released on like a Blu-ray or DVD to be sold to the public. Like, essentially it's just stored and kept away. And I know
Yeah.
there's been some shows, like the Willow show, it didn't do well on Disney, and so they actually pulled it. And some of the younger actors, to your point, who that was their big break, was like, well, I can't obtain this, I can't show it to
Yeah.
anyone. And so the loss of physical media, while people have been buying less of it, I think availability is still important. So I'm not really sure the solution to that problem. I know that's not why we're here or created this podcast for our first topic. It's pretty philosophical and pay grade way higher than ours, but I think it's becoming an issue that I hope doesn't continue, and that studios find a way to compromise rather than removing it altogether.
Well, and like you almost hope, and this is again totally a fabricated idea of thin air. Like you almost wish there was a streaming service that was like the trash streaming service that's like free or whatever. And like if you have a completed movie that you don't believe in as a studio, it goes to this streaming
Yeah.
service and like anyone can watch it and critique it, make fun of it or whatever. But yeah, you definitely, you don't like seeing something that a studio spent millions of dollars, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars on,
Yeah.
and then just they read it off as a tax write-off, right? And that's ultimately that's probably what their decision was, where they'd make more money as a tax write-off than they were to if they were to actually release that film.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, looking forward
I
to
hope
see
this
the
movie
bike
comes
riders.
out though, because it actually looks pretty good.
Yeah, whenever the bike riders comes out, I will be seeing it. So,
Yeah.
and I would have seen the John Cena Looney Tunes movie and Batgirl too,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
those two, yeah.
Like I wasn't even like super. I don't think I had even heard of the John Cena Looney Tunes until they canceled it, and I was like, oh,
No,
I
that's
want
why.
to I want to saw that.
Yeah, so I thought too at first, to your point, that, oh, they must have not even started filming this. He must have signed on, and then scheduling conflict, or it was fully done from what
Done,
I've
yeah.
read. So it's crazy. But yeah, I
And
would
think of
watch
it
all three of those.
like just, and I know we're gonna move on to our next subject here, but just think of it. If you're an actor or a crew member or a director, probably between 6 and 9 months of your life you gave up,
Yeah.
you put in a lot of hours into making this, and then just to see it kind of shut down like that, that's got to be discouraging.
Yeah, and like we talked about before, it's not a situation like the Zack Snyder cut, right, where it's just sitting in a room somewhere that they have access to. It's like it's out of these people's control, unfortunately.
Mhm.
Actually, who worked on the film? It's in the studio executives' hands. So anyway, good first topic for our podcast, I think.
Absolutely.